Hello, welcome to the Analog Book Club again. And today I am doing a sort of a review and some thoughts about Germaine Greer's The Female Eunuch because I've just finished reading it again. This book is originally published in 1970, and I think I may have read it maybe late 70s, early 80s. So a long time ago since I read it first, and I thought it'd be very interesting to read again because it's a feminist classic. And so years and years down the road, how will I respond to stuff she was saying at the time about what kind of a situation women are in, what we'd like to see happening in society, and how society works. And actually, in this book, there's a lot about historically how society worked as well through. Um, Literature examples and pop culture examples, which I really enjoyed, so it wasn't a dry read at all, and I remember really enjoying it the first time, and I'm glad to say I enjoyed it as much this time. I have other, feminist books. This is, again, a second read of a book that came out originally in, 1990. And this is Camille Paglia's Sexual Personae, Art and Decadence from Nefertiti to Emily Dickinson. And as well as an author, I am an artist. So this one was also very influential on me, but I haven't started reading that yet. So that's coming up on the Analog Book Club. And another one which I didn't mention, which I thought perhaps I should include in this series of reading a second time around, was this novel called The Women's Room that had a huge influence on me, and that's from 1997. So that'll be coming up as well if anybody wants to grab a copy of that and compare notes on it or anything. But today it's The Female Eunuch. I thought the substance of the book was excellent, as I did way back when I read it first. When I read it, I didn't have a big understanding of how kind of the situation between men and women worked, because I was a young woman, um, only just kind of socialized in the world, and I thought the whole situation was very strange. The interactions between men and women, I found it all very strange, and how women were viewed within society. And although I had been reading a lot of literature, there were only hints at what a lot uh, of what was covered in this book went into. And I loved that this book was very literary in its scope. Germaine Greer, I think her PhD was on Shakespeare's early works, so she's very into literature, and able to go into things in an academic way that I really like, but in a very accessible way. And this book is footnoted like mad, but at the same time, it's not just about referring to studies in a very dry way. It's about life and lived experience of women. So there's some stuff in it that's anecdotal, but the anecdotes are backed up by examples from popular culture and literature. If I just show you this page, you see the bolded text in a box there. She does a lot of this, putting pertinent quotes in this box. And although it kind of disturbs the flow of your reading a little bit, it does illustrate the points she's making very well with quotations. This book, although it elucidates things a lot, there's going to be a lot of things quite triggering for fellas in it, because she gives fellas a very hard time in it. However, I will say that if any guys hang in there, you'll see that women get a very hard time from her as well, because she absolutely excoriates them in very funny ways. She's very witty, and she goes through a lot of kind of Barbara Cartland type uh, novelistic thinking and sort of woman's magazine thinking, and some of the popular culture um, fiction that she talks about in relation to women in society and the propaganda in society around kind of training women to be kind of obedient types and consider themselves less than men. And, that's how the society works. It kind of depends on that fiction. Um, she takes that apart completely in an hilarious way. And so if guys hung in till later in the book, they'll get laughs along the way. And she'll rip women's thinking to shreds as well, because she argues that a lot of the acting out that women were doing at the time, and you could argue still, um, was to do with the fact of the kinds of repression that they underwent, that it would drive anybody crazy, and that it wasn't, the society wasn't rational, so they're going to act like Salem witches or something in totally irrational ways, acting out that it's the same kind of phenomenon. So, very entertaining read, very enlightening. Um, and very easy to read despite the footnotes and everything, and not just anecdotal stuff. You can argue with all the stuff in it if you're really determined to say, no, it's not like that at all. But I think everybody would get something out of reading that. So, a great book. And the only thing about it is that very many years later, because the original one was in 1970 and it's now 2026. Some things have changed, some circumstances have changed, and the kind of economics that she talks about, that affected women's place within society and everything and how they were seen, have changed now. But it is very interesting looking back on it. If you've lived through it. So I don't know how a younger reader would take some of those things. You'd have to take that into consideration, or perhaps even be aware of the changes that have taken place since. So, but younger readers might enjoy some of our works afterwards that were a reassessment of what has changed since she wrote that book, The Female Eunuch. And the title of the book came from the idea of that repression, how women are like eunuchs, really, that we were so repressed. And, there's still a lot of that going around. Things have gotten better since then, and then worse again, and better and worse. And, the sands keep shifting all the time. So probably this one is up next. I'm on a Dostoevsky one at the moment, but this is probably up next. And I might even read that at the same time. I don't know, because it's a novel. And if I'm reading nonfiction, sometimes I have a novel going at the same time, or I mightn't. I don't know. I read The Female Eunuch on its own and was quite entertained by it on its own, because it was referring and quoting from novels and short stories and things in such an entertaining way. It's like reading a novel nearly, except it gives you a lot of info. I would recommend it to anybody. I would just say, for a younger reader, take into account that some of the economic circumstances she speaks about have changed, but the historical contexts that she gives uh, around women's situation in society hasn't changed. And it's always good to get some of that historical context in a very non-dry kind of a way that would put you to sleep. It does give it in a very entertaining way, and as I say, she's a very witty and very clever writer. So I would recommend it for guys as well, but as I say, you're going to have to sit through perhaps a difficult first section before you get to the bit where she starts slagging off women's behavior as well. She's fair, I think, I think you could say she's fair, and I would hope very much that you would get something out of that book. I got so much out of it even on a second reading. Really good book. The Mary Shelley's mum, I think. And Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, didn't she? Which is about a built man gone wrong, which is kind of, relevant to this book.